Hey friends. So we decided to put together a short video to give you some tips and tricks that we learned either booking our trip to mainland China or whilst we're there, because it can be a little bit of a big task. We've got a few areas that we'll go into, and this will be broken up into different sections, so do stick around for it. If you want to check out any of our videos from the trip, the link will be down in the description. And if you do find this video useful and it helps you during your planning process, do give us a thumbs up. Really appreciate it. It does help us out a lot. And it'd be great if you could hit the subscribe button, the bell icon, to be notified when we post all new videos. Let's get into it. So starting off, China actually isn't the scary big bad that people think it is. There's obviously a very large language barrier there. That is far greater than a lot of other places that you'll typically visit. But if you are looking to visit the theme parks, China is a place to be. The two big ones that we visited on our trip were Shanghai Disney, and that's located in the Pudong province of Shanghai. It's pretty easily accessible by public transport or even like a taxi from the airport. Shanghai Disneyland itself consists of one theme park. You've also got Disney Town connected to that. And then you've got two hotels in the complex. You've got the Toy Story Hotel and the Shanghai Disneyland Hotel. The Toy Story Hotel is the more budget-friendly one, and the latter, the Shanghai Disneyland Hotel, is the deluxe resort. So we've got videos up and tours and reviews of each of those, as well as our time in the park, so you can go and check those out. The other park that we visited was Universal Studios Beijing, and this is located in the Tongzhou district outside of Beijing. It's easily accessible via public transport or taxi. Very, very easy to get to. It's just a little bit further out of the city. Universal Studios itself, Universal Studios Beijing, consists of the one theme park as well as two hotels. You've got the Universal Studios Grand Hotel and you've got the Nuo Hotel. Both of these are slightly on the, let's say, more deluxe side, with the Universal Studios Grand Hotel actually being located like right over the entrance of the park, and the Nuo Hotel is like a 5-minute walk away, so they're both very easily accessible. And once again, we do have videos up for both of those hotels as well as our time in the parks, so go and have a look at those. We'd really recommend both of these parks. Absolutely fantastic. So first up, if you'd like to spend more than 144 hours in China, that's very specific, you will need a tourist visa. And you can obtain this from the Chinese Visa Application Centre. There are two in England, one of them's in London and the other's in Manchester. So this can be a little bit of a process in and of itself because of timescales, queues and the admin involved. So in order to obtain the visa itself, you'll need to have all your accommodation booked in advance, and you have to have printed copies of everything for each person that's applying for the visa. So if you have booked with someone else and it's not in their name, they'll need to sign a disclaimer to say that you booked it for them. Very complicated. You'll also need to have it printed as well. Crazy. You'll need to have a printed, signed application form, and you can fill that in online and then print it out and sign it, as well as like your pictures and things like that. So upon arrival at the visa centre, there's often a really long queue. On the day that we arrived, we got there just before 9 AM. We didn't get into the centre until 2 PM, and we left at 4 PM. We'd queued outside the whole morning. A number of people were actually turned away because they got there too late and the centre had just hit capacity for the day. When you do get there, if you haven't printed everything, you can print it using services at the centre, but we wouldn't rely on that. It's really quite difficult. There are also other services available, let's say VIP services. These are companies where you can fill in the application form with them. They'll essentially go and wait there for you, and then you can just rock up at whatever time they tell you to, and you're essentially skipping the queue. Obviously, they're going to be charging more for that. There will be a premium. We didn't try one of these, so we can't vouch for it, but we did see a number of people using those services. So apps and mobile phones are such a big thing in China. You pretty much can't survive without a phone, and you'll see people practically glued to them. And this is because absolutely everything is done on the mobile phone. There are two main apps for everyday life in China. These are WeChat and Alipay, and you've got their icons on the screen now. WeChat's a little bit more difficult to obtain and get set up on because in order to get access, you need to be invited by somebody who's already a registered user, and they have to have been using the service for at least 6 months. The app is also only in Chinese as well, so you kind of be translating one with the other, one phone with the other. It's really confusing. Alipay, on the other hand, is a lot easier to use. You can download both of these from whichever app store you use, either the Play Store or the App Store for Apple. Alipay itself actually has a translate option built in, which is really useful. And these apps actually allow you to do everything from booking taxis to purchasing tickets, ordering food to your seat on the train, and even booking those train tickets as well. You can register with your credit or debit card in the app, and you can use this to pay for goods in store too. And a lot of vendors prefer this as a payment method rather than cash or credit or debit card. If you use Alipay and you're connecting up your international credit card, there is a small fee for every transaction that you use. So do bear that in mind. If you are in the theme parks, they do accept credit or debit card at all of the tills around the park, so that might be your preferred option when you're in the park. Do try and use a dedicated travel card, something like Revolut. We personally use Curve Card, and our referral link will be down in the description. That links directly to your credit or debit card, so you don't need to top it up or anything. It's our preferred method to pay when we're abroad, and we use it like religion over there. So the other apps that you will need when you are in mainland China will be the Shanghai Disneyland app if you're going to Shanghai Disneyland, and you'll also need the Universal Studios Beijing app. Again, both of these icons are on the screen. Both apps are really easy to use, and they are in English. So just use them, stick to them. They tend not to give out paper maps, so you're going to need them. In order to navigate around the city itself, there are tube apps available. The subway system's really easy and very cheap to use, but Google Maps itself doesn't really work over there due to China blocking Google services. We did find Apple Maps to be a little bit more reliable, and there's also other apps available to use over there as well, dedicated metro apps and things like that. Now, booking everything itself can be a little bit tricky. Obviously, booking the flights to China is relatively easy. The rest of it can be a little bit more complicated. So not so much with Shanghai Disneyland. This is relatively easy, but you can only book a couple of months out. So if you are a seasoned Orlando guest or a Disneyland Paris guest, you'll know that those can be booked months and months in advance. Shanghai Disneyland can only be booked a couple of months in advance. We personally booked directly with Shanghai Disneyland on their website, but there are third-party operators like Klook where you can book tickets as well. Universal Studios Beijing, on the other hand, was a little bit trickier. You can't book directly on their website, which is really frustrating. Everything needs to be done in their app. However, when it comes to actually paying for things, they don't take international credit cards, and they really do encourage you to use the previously mentioned apps, Alipay and WeChat. And then when it goes through that, they get a little bit funky about accepting international card, even though you're paying with Alipay. So, yeah, very, very difficult. We actually did manage to get the tickets for Universal Studios Beijing booked through their app, connected with WeChat. And then we paid for that with our international credit card. It worked one day. For the hotel itself, we really struggled with these. both of the hotels, but we ended up booking these through Trip.com within the Alipay app. So really complicated, but as I said, Alipay, WeChat, they're kind of like your best friends whilst you're in China. They are used everywhere, and just it's the preferred method to pay. For the train between Shanghai and Beijing, we booked this on a website called China Highlights. Now, trains are released a couple of months in advance, the actual tickets for the trains. So using an agent like China Highlights, it enabled us to book this even further in advance, and what they would do is they would book it when that train is released and then send us our ticket. So we didn't have anything to worry about, we didn't have any queues to sit in, we didn't have to like miss the booking process. It was done for us really, really easily. One of the biggest tips that we can give you about traveling to mainland China is to carry your passport all the time. You need that absolutely everywhere. So your Disney and your Universal tickets are linked to your passport. So when we entered the park, we provided the cast member or the team member with our passport, and at Disney they just gave us a ticket from there. Universal actually scanned our passport every single day, and that was how we were let into the park, using facial recognition against the picture on our passport. Really creepy, but really cool at the same time. So your passport will be required pretty much daily when you're in China, so keep it with you and keep it safe. Don't let it go missing. Obviously, as I said at the top, mobile phones and apps are the lifeblood of China. But one thing they do is they block a lot of social media, like Facebook and Instagram, and a lot of Western services in general. So if you are on public Wi-Fi, you won't be able to access Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, things like that. But as I said, Western services too. So this also means that you can't access things like Google Maps or Gmail or anything like that. So if you have an Android phone, it might be a little bit trickier, because obviously we're very reliant on those on Android phones. In terms of the data that you use over there, the mobile phone data, we personally use an app called AirArlo. This provides you with an eSIM, a virtual SIM card, and the one that we purchased was a China one. It told us it was for China, but it was actually registered in South Korea. So this managed to like circumvent the blocks in China, and we were able to use all social media services and Google services and things like that whilst we were on the 4G and 5G networks, which was great. As soon as we went onto their Wi-Fi, that all stopped. So we do recommend the eSIM. You can of course always purchase an actual dedicated SIM card, and you can just put that into your phone. The SIM card over there will suffer from the same restrictions as jumping on their Wi-Fi, but you can use a VPN. The one that we used was Let's Go VPN. The icon for that is on screen now, so you can see what it looks like. That worked quite well in most cases, and it seemed to get around those blocks. So if you did want to purchase a local SIM card and then do that, that's always your option. In order to use the virtual SIM, the eSIM, you'll need to make sure that your phone is compatible with that and your phone is unlocked as well, otherwise that won't work. So finally, transport in China is incredibly reliable. So for public transport, for trains and things like that, you can buy yourself a pass that covers single journeys or multiple days or anything like that. It's really cheap as well. So from the airport, there are a few options. You have the standard metro or subway system, but you've also got the maglev, and that's kind of like a bullet train. It's a high-speed train that will take you to the city centre, and then you can change from there. You can also use Alipay or WeChat to get a Didi, D-I-D-I, and this is the Chinese equivalent to Uber. It can be booked and paid for within the WeChat and Alipay apps. As I said, they rely on these apps. All of these options are paid for by either Alipay or WeChat, although we did see some options at the train station to pay for trains with cash at machines as well as bank cards. For transport between Shanghai and Beijing, as we previously mentioned, there are high-speed bullet trains. We got that booked with us through China Highlights, like I mentioned, or you can fly, really. A train between Shanghai and Beijing took around 4 hours for the high-speed train, and that cost anywhere from $90 and upwards, dependent on the class that you go for. So we went for first class because it was only $50 more per person, and we got a reclining seat, which was great. There are also trains that do take longer, and you've even got like sleeper trains which run overnight, which are pretty cool. So if you don't want to waste any of your time in the day, you can always take one of those sleeper trains. You do also have the option to fly between those cities, and that takes around 2 hours. And the price can vary depending on the time of year, the time of the flight, all things like that. So it really depends what you want to do. So hopefully these few tips have kind of helped set your mind at ease a little bit about traveling to mainland China. It's quite a different place to Hong Kong even, and the rest of the world. And if you wanted to see what either mainland China or Hong Kong are like, there's links to both of our playlists down in the description. We did visit Hong Kong Disneyland last year as well. Give you a little bit of a feel what it's like, because we did go into the city too and just have a little bit of a look around. But if you have found this video useful and it has helped you in planning your trip to mainland China, do give us a thumbs up. It really does help us out a lot with that algorithm. And be sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon to be notified when we post all new videos. And we'll see you on the other side. Thanks.